So, where were we? So now, after 13 years of separation, the last Maharaja of Punjab is finally being reunited with his mother, Maharani Jind Kaur. By this time, the Maharani has already fled to Nepal. The Maharaja is in England. So, let's see how they get together. Hi, I'm Misha.
And I'm Reach, and welcome to Tarihi Tales. So, we'll pick up the story from where we left off in part 2. So, after the War of Independence, the British finally agreed to the Maharaja's demands and let him meet his mother. But at this point, it already has been some years since the Maharani fled to Nepal in Kathmandu. And there were rumors going about that Jang Bahadur, the king of Nepal, wasn't treating the Maharani any better than the British were. A British resident in Nepal is noted to have said, "A more unprincipled scoundrel does not tread on the earth. Jang Bahadur longs to get rid of her, Jind Kaur, for various reasons personal to himself, and declares that if ever she sets foot in British provinces, she shall never be allowed to re-enter Nepal. He also wants her mansion, which is on his own premises." So after hearing these rumors, Duleep Singh was obviously concerned, and so he sent his native attendant, Pandit Nehemia Gore, to kind of see how the Maharani is doing and faring in Nepal. But the Pandit was too busy for the job, it seems, so he didn't go himself. Instead, he writes a letter to his friend who's already going to Nepal and kind of tells him to, check up on the Maharani. But that letter never reaches his friend because it's intercepted by the British. And this just wasn't out of spite, it was that the British didn't want the Maharaja to have any contact with the Maharani unless it was through British means. Now we have many accounts of how the Maharani looked and acted back in the time of the Sikh kingdom. She was described to be a beautiful, charming woman and quick-witted, but by the time they kind of come and see her in Nepal, she's lost most of her eyesight, has grown very weak, and is disinterested in general in all the things going around her. Now, if you remember, Duleep Singh had kind of gotten permission from the British in 1860 to finally visit India, and the premise was that he wanted to do a tiger hunt and wanted to meet his mother at the same time. And so it was arranged that he would meet his mother not on Punjabi grounds but in Calcutta. And similarly, the Maharani was also very happy to leave Nepal behind and go on to meet her son. The Maharaja arrived in Calcutta in January 1861, and he stayed at the Spencer's Hotel. And even when he himself met the Maharani, he noted that she looked very weak and kind of distraught. Seeing her sorry state, the Maharaja kind of offered to buy the Maharani a house in Calcutta, but she firmly refused because all she wanted to do was spend time with her son and stay with her son. And for once, the British were actually not opposed to the plan. And the British were on board with this decision because they really wanted to get her out of India and Punjab in general, because she was the last ruling monarch and they didn't want her to exert any influence in the region. And they had essentially confiscated all her property and jewels and had already told her previously that if she left India, they would give her a salary of £3,000 per annum. So this way, not only would they be paying her £3,000, they'd be getting rid of a threat in India. Now we'll go back a bit. You might remember that I said that the Maharaja came to India for a tiger hunt and to meet his mother. And the tiger hunt seems like a sorry excuse, but that was something that the Maharaja had actually planned to do. He had all the equipment and he had thought all about it, but around that time, something happened that kind of got in the way of it. So around that time, Sikh troops were coming back from China and they heard the news that the Maharaja was staying in Calcutta. And so they gathered outside the Spencer's Hotel and kind of started wanting to greet the Maharaja. The crowd really grew from hundreds to thousands, and all of them were chanting Sat Sri Akal. And this was the last thing the British wanted. So the mother and son were quickly packed and shipped to England.
Now, the Maharaja and the Maharani, they're back in England, and this is a whole new chapter of their lives. She basically says that now she's just a shadow of the cunning, calculating woman she once was. Now, when she gets there, the Maharani basically wants to live in the same house as the Maharaja, as Duleep Singh, like all Desi mothers. The British are like, what? They find this kind of weird, and they try to tell the Maharani, why don't you get the house right next to the Maharaja? And she's like, excuse me? Aapse pucha? And then, like all Desi mothers, she perseveres and she lives with her son for almost a year. But then her son kind of forces her into moving to another house. But it's right next to his house, so she's like, Okay. So now in this period of his life, Duleep Singh, for the first time since he was a little child, he's hearing the other side of the story of the Anglo-Sikh War. For now, as long as he can remember, he's heard the British side of the story because he was just 10 when everything kind of happened. So he obviously doesn't have a very clear memory of it and he just remembers what he's been told later. Now, the Maharani is filling in the empty spaces. She's also telling him about all the land, the private land that he owned himself, not as a Maharaja, that has been taken away from him and his mother and unjustly. So the Maharaja's attitude starts changing, and everybody notices this. Lady Lena herself also says that the Maharani's influence is undoing much of the benefit of his English upbringing and tempting him to lapse into negligent native habit. She also makes the Maharaja write a letter to Dr. John Logan asking his presence to discuss some things, which included the Maharaja's private property, the salt mines he owned, and the Kohinoor diamond. And Dr. Logan and all the historians basically recall that she must have been the one who was. So the Maharani actually was the person who was managing all of the personal property in his state while the Maharaja was a little kid. That's why she knew of all of this. The British are very worried because she's undoing all that they've done in 13 years. They don't want the Maharaja to become a rebel because people in Punjab are definitely waiting for him to come back. Luckily enough for the British, their worries are short lived. In 1863, on the 1st of August, at 6:15, the Maharani passes away. We know the actual time because of this telegram that Duleep Singh had sent to Dr. John Logan the same day. The Maharaja barely had any time to kind of settle himself when he faced another huge loss. In October of the same year of 1863, he also loses Dr. John Logan, who he considers a person akin to his father. He's very upset, obviously, and then he also has a small monument built up on his tomb, which he bears the expenses for. And people at the funeral also noted that Duleep Singh was trying to hold it in, but eventually burst out saying that, "Oh, I've lost my father." So before the Maharani actually died, she expressed her wish that she wanted her remains to be disposed of in the Sikh ritual. So after her death, her remains are basically put aside into a vaulted cemetery until the time that they could be taken back to India to be disposed of properly. And Duleep Singh reached out to try and get permission for this.
And so, the Maharani's final wish kind of led to a new chapter in Duleep Singh's life.
Let us know what you think. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell.